Hello, it's Shari here today, and I'm going to be showing you how I made this fun beach shadow box using a lot of different products. So I'm starting with my stamps, and I'm using some images from the On the Beach stamp set. I've got that cute little fox there, and some seashells, and a coconut drink. And I actually used the bottle of suntan lotion too. I'm just not stamping it just yet. I kind of added that towards the end because I felt like I needed another element. But I'm stamping these in jet black ink, because I'm going to do some Copic coloring. And this is on the 80-pound white cardstock. So I'm just going to do some very simple Copic coloring on this fox with some oranges, just a little simple shading underneath. And then I like to go in with a creamy color to do the white places so they're not so stark white. So I've colored in my shells there as well, and now I'm coloring my coconut drink with a little rainbow umbrella and a yellow straw, and then I'm going to go in with a darker brown for the shell. And then I actually added some dots to give it a little texture to the outside of that coconut shell. And I'm using the coordinated dies and some washi tape just to hold them in place. I'm going to run that through my die cut machine, and now I have all those little images perfectly cut out. Now to make my shadow box, I've cut 2 pieces of mermaid cardstock with the shadow box die, and I'm going to be using this rectangular opening that creates the stitching detail to create the opening in my shadow box. So you can see there's the opening for the front of the shadow box. Now I can fold on the score lines that the die creates so that I can see where all my folds are going to be, get them nice and creased, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the adhesive on so I have that ready. I'm making sure I carefully fold where I cut because this is some thick, sturdy cardstock and I don't want it to bend at the opening that I cut. So I was just being very careful with that part. And then I'm going to fold down the little flaps on the back side. So I'm going to do the same with the second piece, folding down those pieces, and then I can take my 1/4 inch double-sided tape and just put a piece on each of those small thin flaps. And then I'll just trim off the excess with my scissors. So I'm going to put these 2 pieces aside, and then I'm going to go ahead and prep some of the other pieces. So I've cut a piece of sunflower cardstock with the same die, and this is just from a scrap. You can see there's where the fold line is. I'm actually just going to cut that off. So this is going to be my background piece. And I used the die so that it would be perfectly sized to fit in the back of my box. So you can see there it's going to fit perfect, and I did the same thing with a piece of fake tan cardstock, and again I'm just going to trim that off right on that score line. So now this yellow piece and this orange piece are exactly the same size and they'll fit perfectly in the back of my box. Now I'm going to use the new sun ray backdrop to cut the orange piece so that I can layer it over the yellow piece and create a sun in the background of my little shadow box here. So I just tucked that up into the corner of the die and ran it through my die cut machine, and now you can see how I have that sun up in the corner and some beautiful sun rays coming out. So now I can just use some glue and layer these 2 pieces together to create my background. I'm using my tweezers so I don't get glue all over the place because I'm really bad about getting it on my fingers sometimes. So I can just layer those 2 together and I've got a great background. So now I've got some paper bag cardstock and I've cut the 2 hills that come in the shadow box die. And these are my little sand dunes. So I'm just going to add some texture to them with some white watercolor. And then I'm also going to go in with a dark brown, and I used a smaller brush so I could have a little bit smaller splatters of the dark brown. And this is just going to give me a nice little sandy texture to my sand dunes. I'm folding along the score lines of both of those little hills, and then I will go in again with my 1/4 inch double-sided tape and put some adhesive on those flaps. So now I've got those prepped and ready to put inside my box as well. So now I'm going to use the palm tree border die, and it comes with the dies to cut out the tops of the trees here, and I've just cut 2 tops, one out of noble fir and one out of cilantro. And I've cut that border die out of some Desert Storm cardstock, or some craft cardstock I should say. And I'm going to just trim off most of these trees and keep this pairing of trees that I put the tops on, and I'm going to layer it behind the hill. So I'm just going to use a couple of these to create some background for my shadow box. So I can just add some liquid glue and glue that right to the back of my sand dune hill that I created. Now this is the hill that's going to go in the back of the box. The other one will go in the foreground. I'm also going to use that sun that's in that background as a place to put my sentiment. I knew that my box was going to be very full of things and there wasn't going to be a good place to put a banner on the outside. So I'm stamping my sentiment in the sun. It says, "Have a happy birthday." Now I can start to assemble my box. I've pulled the liner tape off one of those sides of the box and I just lined them up and glued them together. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue the background in there, and this is going to cover up that flap that I just glued to the second piece, so it'll have a nice finished look. You're not going to see that flap. I'm just folding up the sides of my box to make sure it lays nice and flat in there. Now I can start to add the hills, and I'm just going to add one side at a time by pulling the adhesive off one side, and then I can use the bottom of the box to align the bottom of the hill and make sure they're nice and straight. I'm going to do the same with the hill that is in the foreground. So I'm just sticking these to one side of the box, and then you'll see here in a little bit when I close the box up how I will adhere the second side. Before I do that though, I'm going to go ahead and add some of my pieces that are inside the box so that I'm not trying to get my hand inside this tiny box. Although I am kind of looking at it to make sure he falls where I want him to, with those trees in the background. And I'm adding a couple little shells. I'm going to keep the other pieces to decorate the outside of my box. So I can go ahead and close up my box now that I have all those pieces that are going to go inside. So I've pulled off the adhesive, I make sure those are laying down flat, and then I can fold my box side over and pick up that adhesive. Now I can do the same thing with the other flap, and this way that I know that my box will lay flat to go in an envelope. Now to finish off, I'm going to decorate the front of the box, and I've cut the trunks of these palm trees here from some wood grain cardstock, and I'm just going to use those to frame up my opening. So I'm going to put one trunk on each side and one palm tree canopy. And these are from the hammock with the trees die set. Now to finish off, I'm going to use the rest of those stamped images and just kind of hide the bottom of the trees and sort of tuck them behind. And here is where I added the bottle of suntan lotion. Just felt like the right side needed a little bit more because that coconut drink was so big on the left side. And then here is my finished card. So it will lay flat and go in an envelope very nicely. And then when the recipient gets it, it will pop open and we have this cute little beach scene to wish them a happy birthday. I really love the little trees in the background and the sun rays as well. So here is a finished look at that card. I like that the sentiment is sort of hidden in the background. You have to look for it. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.